Football agents. Always lurking in the background, advising their clients on what transfers they should take, and making some huge profits off the back of it. I want a slice of that money. So today I'm joined by Second Yellow Card as we become elite football agents in Football Manager. We've simulated 5 years in the future and then looked for 2 players who are currently out of favour at their club and need a move away to revive their career. Once we've made the moves, we'll simulate into the future again. Once in the universe where we've made our moves, and another in the universe where they stayed at their original clubs. And you get to decide who wins down in the comments section. Me, Matt, or the AI agent. So the first player who's asked us for help is Chelsea goalkeeper Gabriel Slaninia. He's only made a handful of appearances for Chelsea and is only the third choice keeper behind Marco Carnesci and Kepa Arrizabalaga. With great potential and on a modest £42,000 a week, we should be able to find him a good move away from the club. Our second player is Marlo Gusto, a right back who starts off at Lyon on loan from Chelsea following a £26 million move in real life, as every single wonderkid under the sun moved to Chelsea. However, he's only made 8 starts for Chelsea in the last 5 seasons and he needs a move away. But as he's currently on £100,000 per week, this one is going to be quite difficult. So helping me out here today then is Matt's second yellow card. How you doing, Matt?
I'm excellent, my friend. How are you?
I am very well, much better for hearing your voice. Are you excited for this?
Very. I'm really excited for this because usually I get to pick the players and so I can kind of, make it a little bit advantageous for myself. But with the fact that you've got to pick these, it means that I was kind of thrown into the deep end here. And I feel like with perhaps that you've not done this before, maybe you were a bit outside the box with some of your thinking, which from the players is definitely the case. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, so we'll talk about the first player then. Chelsea goalkeeper Gabriel Slaninia. What did you think about him?
He's one of those players that I've always seen do really well in other saves. I've never had him on one of my own saves before, but he never seems to get a game for Chelsea, is what I will say. Whenever I do see him, he's never playing for them. Yeah,
it's always tricky for him to get into that first team because on paper he's superb and has got great potential ability. So who were your honourable mentions to move Slaninia to?
Okay, so the first honourable mention, people, this is a bit of a weird one, but there is reasoning before it was Utrecht, of all people. Because I don't know if you saw this in your save, that they had a tycoon takeover a year before the simulation point. And I figured that they were paying huge wages for Dutch sides, which is how I noticed them in the first place, that they were paying more than I think most other sides outside of Ajax. And I figured, you know what, they haven't got the player quality yet, but they can afford him. And it was all set out to be perfect, but then he was having none of it, wasn't interested in the move at all.
Oh, that's so frustrating. Yeah, that would have been a perfect move, actually, because that's a really good place for him to sort of build his career back up again.
The second pick was Freiburg over in Germany. I figured that although he couldn't actually speak German, he'd be able to settle in pretty easily there. Would slot into their first team relatively easily, wouldn't break the bank for them in wages as he wasn't demanding particularly large amounts, and they played in the Champions League as soon as last season, so there's still some pedigree there just to get him some football.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds like a pretty good move for him, actually. Why didn't you choose there? Who did you choose instead?
So I chose in the end, and this is a strange one slightly, Celta Vigo. Again, I do love a bit of Celta Vigo. And the main reason for this is because they had nobody. They had a goalkeeper on loan last season, but he was leaving. I think they might have been in the market for a new keeper, but they hadn't signed one yet. And I think the best goalkeeper they had something like 93 CA or something absolutely appalling like that. And if they went into the season with him, they would be in deep trouble. So it was a perfect little hole for him to slot into where he'd have zero competition for places.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I like that move, actually. That's a really smart move, which is interesting because I've got a similar direction, to be fair. I started off by looking in the Premier League and I went for West Ham United as my first sort of honourable mention. They've got David Raya and Jonas Omlin as their keepers. They're 33 and 31, getting on a little bit, but Slaninia is not quite as good as Raya, and he's only 31, has probably actually got another 5 years in him as a goalkeeper, so I kind of thought that was maybe not the right choice to him in the end.
Yeah, West Ham was actually a club I looked at for both players, just because they just seem to be in the perfect position to need some players.
My second pick, though, was for Fulham. Now, Fulham have done pretty well in the Premier League recently, but their keepers aren't the strongest. Freddie Woodman is the best, and he's not quite as good current ability-wise as Slaninia. However, they do have 4 keepers already at the team, and it's a bit bloated, to be fair. Whether it be realistic for them to actually go for another keeper, I don't know. And so although I thought he could get into that team and build himself back up, I decided against it because when I clicked on to Slinia's information, turns out he speaks Spanish. And I was like, wow, I didn't realise that. Let's check out Spain and see what's going on there, shall we? And so whilst looking through La Liga, I saw high-flying Villarreal, who recently have been in the Champions League. They finished 5th this past season. They've done very, very well, but their keepers are decidedly average and getting on a little bit. So I thought this would be the perfect move for Gabriel Slinia. He's playing at a really high level as the best keeper at the club. And if he can keep on playing well for Villarreal, then he could be in the Champions League pretty quickly and maybe getting on to later stages of the Europa League if they drop down to that, for example. So I thought this was the perfect move. So we've both ended up in Spain with him, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, I think the fact that he speaks Spanish was definitely like a real deciding factor because I do like to sort of carry on those stories.
So the second player I picked then was Marlo Gusto, a right back who's actually moved from Lyon in this save to Chelsea, but is not getting the starts there. What do you make of Marlo Gusto?
He's an absolute nightmare client.
100% agree. 100% agree. Oh, this man is just so greedy. We both know this because Matt and I actually organised the contracts. Once we'd chosen the club we wanted to move the player to, we became the manager of that club, put a bid in for the player, and then negotiated the contract. This is so it gives the player a chance to say no to the club. It means we don't move him somewhere that he wouldn't actually want to go in-game. And it stops me moving both players to Lincoln City for £5 a week. After the contract is organised, we then reload the game and make the transfer happen using the in-game editor, as well as replicating the contract exactly. This is so the teams can carry on as normal without them having to sack their manager, hire me and Matt, and then we resign and they find a new manager afterwards.
You'd expect him to, given that he's not playing football and his surplus requirements, to want to, drop his wages, find that move to get himself some football again. Man is not bothered. Presumably he's got like payments to make on a yacht somewhere in like Saint-Tropez.
Yeah, that's what it seems like, doesn't it? Because he would just not take a wage cut. He's on £100,000 a week at Chelsea, and whatever you do, he just will not take a wage cut anywhere else, despite him being surplus to requirements at Chelsea. He's transfer listed, like the club don't want him, so you think he'd just want to say, right, let's get out of here, start afresh and do something, but he just doesn't. So who was your first honourable mention?
Okay, so I decided that just to spite him in many ways, the French Jack Rodwell here, we would keep him in England at West Ham, given that Ben Johnson was his main competition for places. They were sort of mid-table under Steven Gerrard, but even at West Ham in the Premier League, he would still end up being, by £30,000 a week, their highest paid player. There's just no way that West Ham fans would deal with that. There's just no way they'd accept that.
Yeah, I completely agree. He's just a nightmare client, like you say. What about the second pick?
Second pick was Real Sociedad, over in Spain. I figured send him on a bit of a holiday, probably closer to his boat in some ways. They've got a bit more money. The highest paid player, I think, is on 300 grand a week. God bless those Spanish wages with those wage rises. Best of the bunch in that role is slightly better than him, but I figured at this point I was just trying to find him a move where he would maybe get some rotation time at this point, since it's the best you can really do. And most of the big clubs that can afford him wouldn't ever want him like that. And they are sort of top 6 contenders regularly in Spain. And they could just about afford his wages. I think he would accept 150 a week at Real Sociedad.
Who was then your ultimate pick? Who did you get them to in the end?
I decided that this was a bit of a rebuilding job for the club and him, and I felt that they kind of went together nicely, and that is Borussia Dortmund over in Germany. But they'd actually come 8th in the league last year after many troubles, but obviously reasonable money. He'd still be one of their highest paid players, but that was always going to be the case with this chap no matter where I sent him. Plenty of room for him to grow into that side. The best player at the club in that position as well is about the same as him, but they're a lot older, so hopefully he could work his way into the side, or he'll throw his toys out the pram in 6 months' time and end up with a loan move, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, that's I like it as well, because we've gone for some completely different clubs here. You've gone a different direction to me. I thought that for my first honourable mention, send him back to France, send him home. He's born in Lyon, he's from Lyon, so I thought, right, where's close to Lyon? Montpellier, not too far away, family connections there. He might be happier. He'd actually be the best right back at the club as well. The current best right back, Thiago, is not very good and is 31 years old and is transfer listed. So I thought Montpellier, great move. Aside from the fact he just would not fit in the wage structure at all. Their highest paid players on £27,500 a week, and to be fair, he wants 150 at least. So it was never going to work at Montpellier, which was really, really frustrating. I then thought maybe actually staying in France, go to a club that could afford his wages if he took a pay cut. Rennes have done pretty well in recent seasons. They're on the fringes of European football, have qualified a few times. They don't have a particularly good right back. However, when I tried to get the contracts to work, he just would not take the pay cut. He would have been their highest earning player by about £50,000 a week at the very cheapest. So it just wasn't going to work at Rennes, frustratingly. So I decided not to go for them in the end. And actually, I ended up going over to Italy instead, to Lazio. Now, Lazio have got a big budget. They've got players on some nice wages. And their current right-back, Manuel Lazzari, is 33 years old and is declining. So I was like, right, this guy will fit in perfectly. He can play right-back, can play right wing-back too, and is actually a pretty decent wing-back. And given they play far back Lazio, this, to me, was the perfect move. So Lazio actually could afford his contract, which is quite nice. And we've sent him over to Italy, where hopefully he can have a great career there and build Lazio to be a title-contending team.
Lazio is super interesting because I actually had that. Well, I was deciding, like, before we recorded this earlier this morning, I had like a few guys to sort of trim off my honourable mentions of clubs, and I actually had Stade Rennais and Lazio on that list. And the main reason I'd highlighted at Lazio was because Lazzari was getting a bit old for that spot, and he would have slotted in there perfectly. So, just as well I didn't go Lazio. I'm actually very glad that we've not picked the same side. That was one of my worries.
Well, let's find out then, shall we? Let's simulate these careers and see where they end up. So Matt managed to get Gabriel on a contract for £53,000 per week at Celta de Vigo, a slightly better deal for the club than I did at Villarreal, earned slightly more at £55,000 per week and a bit more in bonuses. However, whilst Malo Gusto is happy to go to Lazio on £90,000 a week and a whole host of bonuses, Matt had to fork out £145,000 per week to get him at Borussia Dortmund. So we've gone 5 years into the future then to see how these players are starting to develop at their new clubs. And we'll start off with Gabriel Slaninia, who is now at Bayern Munich, which I think is a pretty decent move. I don't know about you.
That's remarkable. I mean, and it looks like part of me thinks it might have been a free transfer potentially, which is it seems like he's a backup there, but regardless, he's earning 110k a week and he's getting USA caps as well. Look at those caps.
Yes, 63 caps for America. That's really impressive, actually. If we go to his whole history, it wasn't a free transfer. 63 million?
Wow.
Oh, my word. That is really quite impressive, actually. However, I am looking here at his first few years at Villarreal. So the first season was his 27-28 season. That's the first full season, because that previous one is when he moved from Chelsea to Villarreal in the same season, apparently. But he only made 6 appearances that season, conceding 6 goals. It wasn't until the following season when he started to pick up more appearances and play more games. So I don't know why he wasn't playing for Villarreal then. I'm tempted to have a look at their transfers for that season.
Yeah, it looks like he made a substitute appearance there as well, which is really unusual for a goalkeeper, unless maybe their keeper got injured or something, and that's why he took over. But then that doesn't make sense either. That's really weird. Did they sign another goalkeeper the same window?
They did, right? So we signed Salenia, right, at the end of the 26 season. So he's come in here for 15.25 million from Chelsea, where at Chelsea he'd been kept in the shadow of Kepa Arrizabalaga. Guess who they signed a few weeks after they signed Gabriel Slaninia?
Would it be... Oh, it's...
They signed Kepa on loan, so obviously he was that first choice that season. They just didn't trust... Oh, and they signed him on a permanent deal later on, look, for £110,000 at the very end of the season.
That's fantastic. Are you sure that maybe he wasn't just like Kepa's assistant or something, and he had to travel with him? They were just tied at the hip. Maybe one of them was in witness protection.
But it must be the case where he's only made 6 appearances that season, but across that year, he has become better than Kepa, and at some point early in this next season, supplanted him as the main keeper, right? Because he then plays a lot of games, and then I think takes a January move from Villarreal to Bayern Munich there. But it's not been bad. I mean, it's 43, 40, 28 goals conceded. It's fairly average, I guess. It's nothing spectacular.
Average enough for Bayern Munich to go, hey, here's £63 million.
That is true, to be fair, but they've got so much money. And like you say, I think he looks like a backup keeper right now. He's made 13 appearances in the league, so I guess he's alternating with their main choice keeper, who at the moment... Or who's their backup keeper in all of this, or second keeper? They've got Andre Gomez. Who is a very, very good goalkeeper. Very closely matched, yeah. So they're just alternating between these two. But he also had a bit of a weird career. You know, went to Barcelona for a little while, but didn't really do much.
It's interesting that he was at Utrecht as well with their tycoon. So he was clearly one of their big signings during that period.
And has moved around an awful lot for decent money. But we're not talking about Andre Gomez here, are we? We're talking about Gabriel Slaninia. So it's been a good start to things. Let's check in 10 years then. Wow, 10 years in the future. He's now playing for Juventus on £105,000 a week, but is joining Chelsea. Going back to Chelsea, obviously, as a 33-year-old keeper. I've not actually simulated further into the future in this, so I don't know if he does well at Chelsea or not. So we're sort of stuck with this bit here. But as you can see, he did end up becoming the first choice at Bayern Munich. and then got loaned to Juventus, and then they bought him, and he's been their first choice for the past few seasons, doing really well. That last season, by the way, 16 goals conceded and 25 clean sheets.
Wow.
Okay, so by looks of things, he has won a lot over the course of his career. I've got to scroll down a little bit here. So tons of stuff with the USA, obviously, Nations League, CONCACAF stuff. I guess it's fairly standard for the United States of America. It's either them or Mexico winning that sort of stuff. Villarreal, he wins the Copa del Rey, and then the the Super Cup, came second in the Super Cup, so they just lost that match by looks of things. And then Bayern Munich won a few Bundesligas and DFB Pokals, and has won a Serie A with Juventus as well as winning the Super Cup once. Wonderful stuff.
Swanina, where is my man at? And he's the Everton keeper here, which means that he's not stuck with the move I made for him by any means. In fact, he's been all over the shop. Okay, in fact, he's loaned to Everton. Okay, this is all over the place now. So his contract expires into the season. He's 54 caps for the US, so he's doing solidly there. But then let's have a look at this mess. Oh my God. Wow. He plays a full season with Celta Vigo. Good for him. £15 million, looking good, solid. Yeah, I mean, average rating's not that great, but keepers I find get a little bit mugged off. And then Newcastle are like, hey, here's 12 million. How did they take a loss in 1 year on him when he's played the entire season? That's mad.
Yeah. And a really good season too. 16 clean sheets is no mean feat at all.
Yeah, and then Newcastle are like, hey, let's just bring him in and not play him the entire year. 2 substitute appearances in Europe for a goalkeeper.
Yeah, that's ridiculous, isn't it? And then Atletico Madrid afterwards for a little bit. They paid £15 million for him, and he's done fairly well, actually.
Yeah, it looks to be like his first season. Maybe that was a January move, perhaps, from Newcastle, because he wasn't playing. No, he would have said there, wouldn't it? Actually, that was in the summer. So then the second year, all of a sudden, bam, back in there. 31 conceded, 15 clean sheets with Atletico, back to Spain, and then they loaned him out again. He's had a very strange time. I feel like I've been muddied here because he feels like he's never found a place to settle. He's not done more than 1 year or 2 years at most at any club so far. Now, obviously, he's still fairly young for a keeper, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see another 2 or 3 clubs because it seems that he's joining... Who is he joining, actually? He's actually joining Everton permanently. So we'll see in the 10-year recap whether he's managed to forge a career at Everton. Maybe Everton was finally the club that he can actually make a career at, but... it's not looking good so far. Well, it's looking okay. It's not looking as good as Bayern.
Yeah, I'm a bit shocked by all of this. I just think he's not been given a chance anywhere, has he, at this stage? Which is very harsh on him, really.
Right, so 10 years in now. Where is our boy at? Is he... okay. Swanina is still at Everton. That's more like it. And 177 league appearances for Everton over that period is a lot nicer. And he's actually still got a year left on his deal, showing no signs of retiring anytime soon. 200 goals conceded in that period, but that's... Oh, of course he still had a loan spell.
Of course he did. Of course.
Wouldn't be him without one, would it? I can sort of understand why, though. It looks like at the start of the season, maybe they signed another goalkeeper here and then played a couple of games. Then they immediately yeeted him off to Spain for the 3rd time in his career. Another 16 clean sheets, though, with Almeria. That's very solid for them. Probably his best, one of his best seasons ever. Back to Everton, straight back into the starting lineup. Did Everton, sign a lone goalkeeper of their own that season or something?
It must have been something like that. Or, he conceded 45 goals the season beforehand, his worst season in terms of goals conceded. So that could be something to do with it, maybe. Looking on the best 11, then, they played this guy instead, who is a real player, but I've not got his face in my face pack. But he moved... Wait, he was at Everton all along and then just played most of the games that season and then took a move to Real Betis, and that's why Slovenia came back and was the first choice then.
Oh, they just sent another dude to Spain because they just love sending people to Spain, apparently.
This whole goalkeeper situation is bizarre, but I think we've worked it out now.
Milestones, what have we got? Just all the US things.
Yeah, a bunch of stuff with the US, which is expected. But I am seeing in 2029 a Europa League win with Newcastle.
Where he played no matches. Oh, no, he did make that substitute appearance, didn't he?
He did, actually, yeah, he did. So maybe that was in the final to save penalties or something like that.
Does that even
what I'd
count?
like to think.
It feels like pity appearances. He sort of won it. He's won it in spirit.
Won it in spirit. His name's on the trophy, maybe, potentially. Yeah. I'll be honest... I know it's down to the comments to decide who wins this, but I do tend to think I might have edged you out here a little bit.
A little bit, by about 20 points if this was a league, I'd say.
But the AI agent might have done a little better than us. Oh, okay, this is a little bit more unexpected. It looks like he's had one move in his career since the AI agent took over, and it was to West Ham United. But quite late in the career, oh my word, he stayed at Chelsea for so long and never got any appearances.
Gabriel, what
at
happened?
all. I mean, obviously he was great because he went to West Ham and became their first choice keeper immediately and has been there ever since, doing really well for them by looks of things. But West Ham were one of my thoughts to move him to. So, you know, if he'd just taken that move earlier on in his career, it would have been interesting to see how he'd done. But Chelsea just never rated him enough.
No, like at most, what's that, 13 appearances, he got his best. 8 clean sheets in 13 games for Chelsea in 2029 is very solid, and then they just somehow... That, to me, should earn you a chance to play full-time next season if you're doing that kind of quality. 8 clean sheets in 13 is outrageous. 5 goals conceded just wasn't enough, and... Then again, like, I don't know. It's a good move for him, at least. It wasn't like it was a free transfer either. He just clearly got sick of playing or not playing for Chelsea.
He's won a few competitions here. Europa League, the Premier League as well.
You're going to see something in a minute.
But he's not played much here at all. What?
Yep, you've seen it.
FIFA World Cup winner with the USA. I mean, fair play.
That's remarkable.
He is their first choice keeper. The 2030 World Cup then. They beat Brazil in the final.
Of course they did.
I'll be honest, I don't think this agent is better than us. I think he comes third place, but he's won a World Cup, and that's just... That's nothing to do with the agent. No, it's just luck of where you're born.
His agent didn't move him to the US, did he?
Right, let's look at Malo Gusto instead then. I moved him over to Lazio, and he's now playing for Newcastle, interestingly, with a brief hiatus in Shakhtar as well. So he's been all over the place already. On £93,000 a week, he's still wanting an awful lot of money in this, which is a bit annoying. But if you look at his history, he had the one season at Lazio where he didn't play... He played 27 times there for them, but only 7 starts. Took a loan move to Everton the following season, but only made 5 starts and 4 substitute appearances before going back to Lazio, but then moving to Shakhtar for £900,000, where... He may have got good average ratings, but he's not playing a lot of games, like 20 there, 15 the season afterwards. So perhaps there's just not a lot of games in the Ukrainian league or something, or he was using rotation, but it earns him a big move to Newcastle, to be fair, where he is a fringe player and is not really doing a lot. This isn't going well.
It's that the fact that he went from an £11 million move and the huge money that we had no choice but to put him on to leaving to go to Shakhtar for 900 grand in like 2 seasons. That's mad. Because that was mid-contract. He wasn't on a 2-year deal, was he? So yeah, that's remarkable.
That is true. Particularly given that Lazio's right wing back at the time was really old and getting worse. And I was like, well, it seems like the perfect move, but I guess they maybe brought someone else in instead, potentially. And he just went on elsewhere. I'm a little bit upset by this. I thought he would have done better. But he just seems to be a bit of a journeyman now, moving around the place, and oh God, I'm a bit worried for the 10-year progress now. Let's have a look at this. Right, okay, well, he didn't stay at Newcastle very long, actually. He went to Aston Villa, then Benfica, and is now at Torino. I mean, yeah, journeyman continuing. He actually had a pretty decent time at Villa by looks of things. 28 million for a guy who barely played any games in the previous 3-4 seasons. It was a January transfer move, so actually looks like he's moved and played most of the rest of the games the rest of that season. Played 36 times for the next season, so it was clearly their first choice for the next 2 seasons, actually. And then dropped off a little bit in that next season at Aston Villa. Took the move to Benfica, where he got 4 substitute appearances, that's that. And then a loan move in January, by looks of things, actually, to Torino. Why are you spending £10 million on a player to not play him or start him at all and then loan him out in January? That just seems bizarre to me, Benfica.
That is weird. It strikes me as one of those situations where Benfica, because they often produce the players they do, have probably got a transfer budget of like 800 million and they just sign people.
Yeah, anyone they can get their hands on that might do him a favour, potentially. I'll be honest, this has not gone very well. He's barely featured at all. He's only made 292 league appearances across his career. And what's that, 60, 70 or so? Like 200 since we've moved him, basically. Which is not great for 10 seasons, really, 200 appearances. Now, has he actually won anything? He's won... Oh, no. He won the FA Cup with Chelsea. But that was before we moved him, I think. Yeah. Potentially. Yeah, it was.
The season before, I think.
So no, he's just come runners-up twice in the Coppa Italia and FA Cup. Great.
Right then, Malo Gusto. Where is he? I moved him to Dortmund. Is he still... Oh, wow. Manchester United. Oh, I'm hoping for like a £50 million transfer fee or something. Okay. Oh, he's been all over the place. Wow. No France caps, but 29 years old, playing for Manchester United. I mean, is he playing for Manchester United? Sort of. It doesn't seem like he's playing a lot, but he's there, and that's saying something. Is there some big transfer fees in his future? Oh, wow. He's been all over the place. He didn't even... So I don't think my Dortmund move was particularly successful when you look at it, really. Loaned out to Gladbach straight away and didn't even start for Gladbach most of the time. Back to Dortmund, didn't play. And then loaned to Eintracht Frankfurt. At least then, once you went to Frankfurt, 28 starts, solid season, man of the match awards as well. And then it was all just loans again. Back to Dortmund, didn't play him. To Valencia again, plays really, really well. Man just needed a move and finally did get that move to Valencia and actually, to be fair, killed it. 3 goals and 4 assists, 5 man of the match awards in La Liga. That's ridiculously good, and that's what's provoked Manchester United at the start of the following season to plop down £29 million on him to, my guess would be a backup right wing back there. But that's going to potentially give him a chance to win some stuff in Europe and maybe even a Premier League in there if they get their act together over the next couple of seasons potentially.
Yeah, he's done well. He's really used that Valencia move, hasn't he, to propel himself quite nicely and earn yourself a move to Man United is incredible. I think he's done so well in all of that. So already, I feel like your move has been slightly better than mine, given that he's actually playing a bit more and he's getting better average ratings. So I'm excited to see how he does in another 5 years' time.
I guess the question is, did my moving him to Dortmund actually make any difference because he did sod all there? And will the other agent potentially manage to get us both by just taking him straight to Valencia? So 10 years into the future now, is he still at Manchester United or has he moved on to pastures new? He's at Almeria. But is he on loan? Is he there permanently? Oh, yeah, it didn't work out so well for him at Manchester United, it would seem. No France caps, and it looks like he is joining Lens at the end of this season. So what's this been like? Oh, that's unfortunate. 2 loan spells, £1 million there. And again, when he was out on loan, he didn't seem to be quite able to recapture the form he'd found at Valencia and Frankfurt in his loans. And then eventually ends up joining Almeria for free. Seems to rejuvenate himself a little bit in the first season. And I think perhaps with you playing as a wing-back, you need to be on it. And I think maybe he was just not quite able to have the fitness levels to stay along with things. And now joining Lens, back to France, I suppose, his home nation to finish things off. Shame he didn't go back to Lyon or somewhere like that. But it feels like the peak would have been that move to Manchester United, and that kind of all just sort of fell apart for him after that. Still got a decent number of games. Don't know how many it was compared to, like, not that many more than the one in your save.
No, actually, it must be about an extra 30, 40 games or so compared to where he's played with me. So actually, we may have done equally as bad with this.
Yeah, I guess the milestones could potentially... Maybe he won something with Manchester United during that one season. Runner-up in the Carabao Cup, but he did win a DFB Pokal with Dortmund, but, like, let's be honest, he probably didn't even play in it.
Yeah, probably not an awful lot have done there. I think given that you've played a few more games than me and maybe got some bigger moves and higher transfer fees, I think you might just pip it out with us two. But I'm really scared that the AI agent has just got him an amazing move and he's like France's best ever right back or something.
He wins the Ballon d'Or every year.
He's he's done he's probably earned a lot of money across his career at this stage. He's now playing for Al Jazeera, which is United Arab Emirates. So he's out there earning a lot of money in the desert. Let's have a look at his history. So actually, the same season we moved him, he actually took a loan to Almeria, as you say, played fairly well for them, which then earned him a £15 million move to Stuttgart, where actually he's done pretty well, playing a lot of games, getting some decent average ratings. Obviously dropped off a little bit towards the end of his time at Stuttgart as he got a bit older, but of course, big clubs in the UAE are coming along to pay a lot of money for him, and he's ripped that league apart, those average ratings as well. So he's done very, very well there out in the United Arab Emirates. Yeah, and I'll be honest, I think the agent might have won.
I think he might have done, just because like he's had stability at Stuttgart. I wonder how much they were able to get him on weekly. I bet it was less than we got, because he was not willing to do anything with us. I bet the following season it was probably like, I don't know, if it was less than 100 grand, I'd be absolutely amazed. But still, I mean, just consistent assists almost every single season. Like 5 man of the match awards one year, and then he goes to the Middle East and just absolutely kills it. I mean, 6 assists. Yeah. No man of the match awards, weirdly, but I guess it's because every one of his strike teammates are probably scoring 7 a game as well. Probably playing with Ronaldo still.
I imagine so, yeah. On £81,000 a week, so he's still getting a lot of money out there as well. Although maybe not as high as you'd expect. If we look at the milestones, competitions that he's won, actually, nothing.
He's won a big relegation.
A big relegation from his loan spell. Wow. So clearly he was the bright spark of that season, though, because he got that £15 million move afterwards. So despite getting relegated, he must have been doing something well. But I'm very surprised that he's won nothing with Al Jazeera at all. So there you have it. We became football agents, and I think we've done an okay job, but it's for you guys to decide in the comments section. We have done another video of this over on Matt's channel, but Matt, where can people find you?
You can find me over on my channel, of course. You can find me on Twitter sometimes, which is Second Yellow Curd without the A because character limits, and all the other various platforms, Instagram, TikTok, all of those.
But thank you very much, Matt, for coming onto the channel today and letting us in with your idea. It's a fantastic idea. And if you want to see more of it, there's tons of videos like this on Matt's channel, so go check that one out as well.